Everybody, this is Perch. Would you pay more for comics if the quality went up? So, really kind of think about this one for a second. If the comic was $7.99, so $8, and the total page count, let's say, is 32 pages, right? But the artist was, one of the top level artists. Let's say Alex Ross is actually doing interiors, or let's say that we've got a long X-Men run with Brett Booth, or maybe you hate Brett Booth and it's Art Adams, or maybe it's if you hate Art Adams and maybe it's J. Scott Campbell, or maybe if you hate J. Scott Campbell, I'm running out of names here. You don't understand what I mean. It's a top flight artist. It's a top creator. The stories there are zero fill-in stories. Its continuity is tight and well orchestrated. There's not weird printing errors or any of this. But it's $8. Would you pay for that? Would you be willing to spend more for a comic if the quality was guaranteed? I bring this up for a reason, not because I think comics should go up. Comics are way too expensive, and like I've talked about in other places, and I think there's some disagreement on this topic for me is that it isn't just it isn't just the money. Comics I think are too expensive. We do have to bring other people into it, everything else, but there's a lot of problems, and you can't just wave a magic wand and raise the price or lower the price and suddenly everything gets better. I don't think that is true. But at the same time, I think that when we talk about comics, what sparked this kind of train of thought for me is that I made the comment, I made this video about how, based on the sales analysis and other things that we're seeing, that comics have fallen into a trap. They're relaunching constantly in order to artificially spike a sales number, and you're seeing the attrition get faster and faster and faster. And the only solution to this or not the only solution, but a solution, is that we need to give comics longer runs. We need to, potentially wait out a dry spell in order to, break ourselves of this relaunch habit, this I think very bad place that we've gotten ourselves into. But there was a response saying, this wouldn't work. Long runs wouldn't work, and it wouldn't work because there aren't talented people doing comics today. And that struck me as peculiar because I do think there are talented people in comics today. I think that there are people who are good. I think there are people who are bad. I think there are some people who are being pushed higher than they should be. I think there's a lot of new writers, honestly, that are not putting out great work. And I don't think it's because they're fundamentally bad writers, but I think they're getting pushed onto the big stage long before they're ready. I'll use this wrestling analogy. If you have somebody who's just entered into wrestling, if they're excited to do it, and they somehow get a developmental contract deal with the WWE or wherever it happens to be, and they just started learning the ropes. They started learning how to take bumps and all the rest, learning some skills on the microphone, learning some just various ways to make the match look stiff without actually working stiff, all that kind of stuff. And 2 months later, the wrestler is in the main event. That you're suddenly you put the championship on him and you're off to the races. It wouldn't work well. In wrestling, they call that overexposing somebody, and we've seen that in the past. They have done that. I think part of the whole deal is like a WCW had this wrestler Goldberg, and he had a very limited moveset, and they pushed him very, very rapidly to the main event. They gave him an undefeated streak, and they worked really hard to make him kind of a top level wrestler. And he wasn't ready. They made some money off of it, but it fizzled very, very quickly because it became clear he was limited in the ring, and people didn't want to work with him. And I believe he was the one that injured Bret Hart and basically took him out of wrestling. But it's like all the problems, and a lot of this is common sense, by the way. You don't put somebody into the spotlight before they're ready because you increase the chance that they're going to choke, that they're going to do poorly there. Every now and then you do get a unicorn type person who can handle the pressure, who understands how to adapt to it, and just naturally it's in their blood, but it's very, very rare. And more often than not, and this is where I don't think you can argue this fact, in comics is littered with hundreds of people who had very short careers because there was no mentorship, there was no training, there was no hand-holding, there was no helping somebody into the industry. They just tossed them into the deep end. It didn't work, and then they kind of turned their attention to the next shiny object, and people drowned there. That's I mean, there's so many stories around that. When I talked to Sean Murphy way back, one of the questions he had asked are, what are the good stories? What are the good outcomes in comics? There are some, absolutely, but there's a lot of people who just vanish. The whole conversation around Stephen Platt is a great one of here's somebody who got pushed really strong, and then it burned out. So I do. So what does this all have to do with money and everything else? Well, part of the problem right now is our whole system feels set up to failure. When I say that, I mean you bring new people in. You've got an extremely thin editorial staff. And I know this kind of goes against the narrative of a lot of other things, but if there's one kind of solid argument you can make for the big publishers, that they need more editors. They badly need more editors. In some cases, they need different editors. But there again, is it that they have somebody who's bad at their job, or is it because they have somebody who was never trained in their job? Why are we getting to what caused us to get to this place where there are errors in the comic and there's problems? What was the culprit? Was it that this person is naturally bad at their job? Was it that they were never trained? Was it that they have no mentorship? Was it that they were stretched too thin, where a reasonable person coming into the job could do 2 books or 3 books and they gave them 20? I mean, these are all factors of why we see poor performance. I think that there's a this is a significant problem. Comic books, the reality is comic books are run on the cheap in a lot of cases. And the fans, the customers, again, and this is one of those things where I use those words somewhat interchangeably. I do think that customers is the right word, because in this case, it's somebody you're wanting to take money from. This is a customer. It is, we as customers expect high quality, especially now, especially with more competition. You've got streaming services, you have video games, you have phone distractions, you have all these different elements, some of which are free. I mean, social media itself is a massive distraction and it costs nothing. And the expectation level is a lot higher. By the way, and this is one thing I don't hear enough about, one of the reasons why people's expectations for art has gone up is because now you can go on Instagram or you can go on Twitter or these other places, and you have fans producing art, and the fans are cheating to some extent. This is one of the dirty secrets. Any of us, myself included, can go up and do a little pinup image of, say, Wonder Woman, and it's like we can spend a bunch of time on it. I mean, who knows how much time I spent? I could have spent a month on it. I could have spent an hour on it. Nobody knows. But I can do a little pinup version of kind of a silhouette of Wonder Woman, or a profile view. It looks great. And everybody's like, wow, it's great. You're a great artist. Okay. That doesn't translate to doing 60 panels. Trust me, I'm doing my own comic book. And there's a massive difference between doing a pinup or a splash image or a single image, and then suddenly, okay, we need a character to walk across the hallway and get into this action and have an action sequence in this book. That suddenly is dramatically harder. But what we're seeing on Instagram and social media are the best of these pieces of art. We're seeing not I won't say cheat, but we're seeing an idealized form of what can be done. Very few people are posting, like what John Byrne's currently doing with his he's just basically doing the X-Men comic over on his website. Very few people are doing actual panel work. They're just showing a single splash. So when we look at that, we're like, wow, that looks really good. Why does this comic look like crap? Well, I mean, some of it may be that the artist is undertrained. Some of it is that we now got the penciler also doing the inking, and it's a lot of work. Some of it may be that, the artist got scripts in 2 days before it was done and was rushing it. And part of it is that we are the comparison example we're getting is somebody who's able to just draw, a single page splash image of a character versus somebody who's having to do 20 pages of sequential art. It's a different thing. But I mean, I'm not saying it's not fair. It's just, it's one more way that things look worse. I started this conversation out talking about price. My point here is, at the end of the day, one of two things has to happen. If we are going to increase staff, if we are going to increase quality, if we're going to put more, serious people on, if we're going to be more careful about hiring, if we're going to clean house inside one of the publishers and bring new people in, that's going to cost money. It's going to cost more money than we're spending today. There's a lot of very talented artists, writers, editors, other people. There's plenty. And so to kind of respond to that comment, I disagree. There's plenty of creative people out there. There's plenty of people who can do this job quite well today. Some of them will need training. Some of them just need money. And the reality is, maybe a lot of really capable editors with a good, strong sense of how to ship product, how to organize things, how to manage to a budget, and how to maintain continuity. Maybe those people want more than $35,000 a year. You think? I mean, I'm just saying, anybody who's really good at that job, they would go elsewhere. They would go get their money somewhere else. They're not going to be satisfied with that salary. So you're going to have to pay more. If you're going to pay more to your talent in order to get better product out, then one of two things has to happen. Either you have to sell a lot more of it in order to make up the money to pay these people, which would be great, but that's not going to happen overnight. Or you're going to have to lose money, or you're going to have to raise prices. That's pretty much your options. Now, you could argue, and I'd say you'd have a good point, that Marvel and DC, if they really want to build up their IP farms, if they really want to, benefit the overall licensing and capabilities of their company, then what they need to do is, maybe they need to lose money for 5 years. Maybe they need to take the amount of money they're spending on their publishing division, double it, and just say, well, you know what, we're going to raise, and really put a lot of effort in distribution and other places. We're going to sell twice as many comics as what we sell today in 3 years. To do that, we're going to go into the red. We're going to lose money for a period of time, but we're comfortable doing that because this is going to build up our IP library. This is going to help with our licensing. This is going to help all the other things. And frankly, the amount of money we make off comics is small anyway, so this is a good investment. Let's do it. That's a choice they can make. I would argue that's the choice they should make. But, will they do it? Probably not. I think you'd have to have a very skilled negotiator to be able to go into one of the big two and say, hey, I want more money, and you're going to make less for a while we build this thing back up and make it strong. I'm ready, by the way. Folks at Marvel and DC, bring me in. I'll make the PowerPoints. We'll do it. We'll make this pitch. I'm joking, of course. They don't want to talk to me. Anyway, that's what I think. So the question is, would you pay more? Is this a money issue? By the way, I'm oversimplifying. We're doing what is this, like a 12-minute video? It's way more complicated than 12 minutes can talk about. I'm opening up the question. So now, in the comments, feel free to say I'm an idiot or whatever you'd like to do, but this is the dialogue that I'm hoping to start having. Anyway, let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all the contact information description of the video, and thanks for listening.